Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives, and today we're going to be continuing our discussion on the Poison X storyline as we take a look at Venom number 162. Now, last time on Poison X, Venom and the X-Men had traveled to an alien world, or well, the X-Men did, and they just kidnapped Venom because of his expertise with symbiotes. And as they were trying to look for information on Corsair and the Starjammers, they wound up running into a gaggle of Killer Thrill's men who had heard that they were looking for them. A battle ensued in a bar, and sadly, in the battle, the X-Men were forced to retreat after Cyclops wound up getting stabbed in the chest. Venom was thankfully able to cover their escape with a web block, but in said escape, he wound up finding the person that outed them to Killer Thrill's men. This wormy little guy that they had encountered when they first arrived. After interrogating the man for information, Venom was able to get a lead that he and the X-Men could follow. As it turns out that the man knew exactly where Killer Thrill and her men had gotten their symbiotes, from a bounty hunter by the name, or arms dealer by the name of Hazemancer. And with this information, Venom and the X-Men were able to find Hazemancer's base and led an assault on it just as he was in the middle of showing off his goods to a potential customer. And yes, the goods he was selling were other symbiotes. Well, Venom and the X-Men did their best to fend a Hazemancer and his security system and his security off. In the midst of the battle, one of the containers containing symbiotes was broken, and the said symbiotes wound up escaping. And at the end of last issue, those symbiotes wound up bonding with the X-Men, which is where today's issue begins, as we see the the comic opens with the X-Men as they're now all just enhanced with their own symbiotes. And of course, as you do with a symbiote, they're all now much stronger, faster, better, and just all around more powerful. And on top of that, like with most symbiotes, their powers are now also enhanced as well, and in various ways that we haven't seen. Like for example, when Cyclops' symbiote bonds with him, it ends up crushing his visor. But in place of that, the suit actually becomes his visor, and in his own words, he can now see with every cell. So he can, using the symbiote goo, he can now shoot lasers from literally any part of his body, from his eyes, from his arms, from his shoulders, from his leg. At one point, he even shoots it out of his hands. It's actually kind of badass, and we even see how it's affecting all the other X-Men as well. With Jean Grey and her psychic powers, since she's now got two minds up here, it allows her psychic powers to essentially be even more exponentially powerful. We see that Iceman can now stretch his ice out so that they're almost like elastic arms. We see that Beast can now manifest little demons from his fingers that can act as his own little personal army. Well, I'm guessing Angel is now more aerodynamic, but sadly his symbiote also comes with a hindrance. As I mentioned, part of Angel in this form is that his wings can sprout fire, and since the symbiotes are weak to fire, it means he can't utilize that as often. So while the rest of his physical attributes are enhanced, he's also kind of got a handicap now. But regardless, the X-Men are able to use their new powers to start breaking through most of Hazemancer's security, while Hazemancer himself is duking it out with Venom because, well, apparently he knows the Venom symbiote, which I know I mentioned before on Saturday, but yeah, even the Venom symbiote's like, dude, I have no idea who the heck this guy is, but he seems to know us, so whatever. But Hazemancer is duking it out with Venom, and well, he sees the X-Men and being bonded with all these symbiotes, and he thinks, oh hey, cool, these symbiotes are now taking on their powers. That means they'll be even more worth a fortune, because yeah, as we've seen with Venom, symbiotes do seem to have the ability to take on the powers of previous hosts. However, after the X-Men managed to get through Hazemancer's security, and the customers he was planning to schmooze off of have now just bolted, the X-Men now turn their attention to Hazemancer to start duking it out with him. Unfortunately for them, Hazemancer does have a bunch of anti-symbiote tech, so he is able to at least somewhat fend them off. Unfortunately for Hazemancer, he kind of forgot about Venom, as while he was duking it out with the X-Men, Venom managed to use his camouflage abilities to sneak up behind him, and, well, he delivered the coup de grace, knocking him down. Hold on one second. Sorry about that, Chinny wanted to leave. But anyway, yeah, Venom is able to knock him down, and while at first Venom has full intent to just straight up kill this guy, the X-Men stop him, partially because, well, they're the good guys and the good guys don't kill, and also because, well, they need information. After all, part of the reason why the group attacked Hazemancer like they did was because they needed information, and as a result, while some of them want to see him dead, especially the symbiotes that are bonded to the X-Men because, well, they don't like really being held captive against their will, getting tongue-tied. Basically, they do need to gather information. Unfortunately, Hazemancer's not willing to cooperate, and he even tries pushing buttons by trying to say, how about we just cut a deal? Why don't you bond with other symbiotes? Let them implant your powers, and with all the money we can get, you can get yourself like a new dad. Which almost gets Cyclops angry. But thankfully, they have a psychic on their roster. As such, Jean Grey manages to use her powers to start probing through Hazemancer's mind, and she does manage to get another lead for them, because well, he won't reveal the identities of his clients, because, okay, yeah, the X-Men don't know that Killer Thrill is the one that did it, but we do. It turns out there is still a lead they can follow. As it turns out, Hazemancer did another thing to the symbiotes beyond making them more aggressive. He put tracking devices in them. Most likely this is just in case they ever got stolen or escaped, but point is, with that in mind, the X-Men now have a means of tracking Killer Thrill and her men, because, well, they got symbiotes from this asshole, so odds are that those symbiotes have tracking devices as well. As such, Beast managed to use his future tech to hack into Hazemancer's systems, and he's able to get the signal to track down Hazemancer, and so Venom and the X-Men leave, with the X-Men forcing Venom to turn Hazemancer over to the authorities, in this case the Nova Corps. But in the meantime, back out in space, it turns out that Killer Thrill's men have managed to get back to her and let her know, oh yeah, the X-Men are after you. And Killer Thrill, being the typical villain who gets off on other people's pain, brings Corsair in and rubs it in his face that her men fought the X-Men, and one of them managed to stab Scott through the chest. And at this point, I'm just assuming that at this point the symbiote that bonded with Scott also healed him up, so basically, but Corsair knows his son too well, and he knows that, well, Killer Thrill and her men made a goof. They shouldn't have just left the X-Men for dead, because now they're coming for them. The thought of that even gets Killer Thrill excited. But in the meantime, yeah, we also get some more tension with Venom and the X-Men as we see them going back into space as they've gotten back on their ship and are now chasing after Killer Thrill and her goons, and we do get some butting of heads between Venom and the X-Men, partially because they forced him to let Hazemancer live, but also partially because Venom's not exactly okay with the X-Men being bonded with symbiotes, because, well, they're symbiotes. While these symbiotes definitely were victims as well, well, Venom has had enough experience with symbiotes to know that them staying bonded with them is probably not a good idea in the long run, because after all, stay bonded with a symbiote long enough, then that bond becomes more than just external. Eventually, they will fully bond with them, and as Venom even says, part of the Venom says that they're already starting to get emotional due to the bond with the symbiotes. They're getting more aggressive, being more angry. At one point in the story, Beast even started butting heads with Cyclops because their symbiotes were siblings. So basically, Venom thinks that they need to get rid of them right now. But Jean says that but Jean kind of votes against it. While she agrees with Venom that keeping the symbiotes is probably not a good idea, at the same time, these symbiotes want justice for what Hazemancer did to them, and they don't want their kind to be used as weapons. So they do want to chase after Hazemancer. They want to chase after Killer Thrill and Co. just so they can face justice. So, hold on a sec. Apologies, got food. But anyway, yeah, Jean admits that the symbiotes clearly want justice for what Hazemancer did to them, and so they're with the X-Men and want to at least save their brethren. Admittedly, this still feels like a weak reason to keep the symbiotes because, well, even if the symbiotes have their reasons, at the very least, they're still parasitic organisms that bond with an organism and then overtake it. So, maybe kind of a weak moral ground, but hey, X-Men could use the extra help, and these symbiotes are willing to help them, so hey, whatever. Point is, the X-Men want to keep the symbiote. The point is, the X-Men want to keep the symbiotes, and the symbiotes want to stick around, so no one's going anywhere. No one's going anywhere. Although the X-Men do admit that they probably should send a message to Magneto, so he's not wondering where the hell they are, and apparently the danger of the ship's AI did that already, first chance she got. So hey, no harm, no foul. However, there's still one more bit of the story left to cover. You're probably wondering, why am I still covering this part of the story? Or why am I covering this storyline at all as part of the Spider-Verse retrospectives? After all, nothing we've really seen so far has had anything to do with Spider-Verse. I mean, yeah, we've included Venom, who's a Spidey baddie, and who has powers very similar to Spidey, but aside from maybe mentioning Venomverse one time, the story so far has had really nothing to do with Venomverse. Maybe with the exception of the Venomized X-Men, but that's still, I wouldn't really call as part of Spider-Verse. After all, they're not from other universes. So, how does this story have anything to do with Venomverse? Why do I count this as a follow-up story? Well, I think it's time we got an answer to that question, because we cut back to Hazemancer after he's been arrested, as we see him in a cell at a Nova Corps base. He's now stripped of all his gear and now put in a prison suit, and he just kind of looks pathetic. He looks pathetic. He's not beaten down, but he may as well be, as he's lost everything and now he's just moping in his cell. However, as he's moping, the Nova Corps outside his cell start immediately go on attack because something's going on. And while Hazemancer doesn't really pay any attention to it, he does suddenly take notice when he hears a boom coming down the hallway. And well, we don't see what it is that's attacking, but we see Nova Corps' men going up to face it, and one by one, all of them are just either knocked out or just straight up killed, as we see what looks like silver tendrils coming up, wrapping around their throats, them being stabbed with silver spears. Just basically, they're all basically just one by one. Any Nova Corpsmen that face this thing are all just killed off until whatever this thing is goes up to Hazemancer's cell and opens it up. And we don't see what this thing is right away, but it does speak to Hazemancer, as it says, you're Hazemancer, right? You're a hunter like me. Well, Hazemancer tries to say he's not a hunter anymore. His entire operation's been destroyed by Terrans. He's out of the business. Well, we soon see who it is that freed him, as the final page of the comic reveals that his savior, so to speak, is a poison version of Kraven the Hunter. Yep, the poisons are back, and as we can see here, they are now in the main Marvel universe. And that's where the issue ends. So, okay, thoughts on the issue itself. Once again, it's very bare bones, so to speak. It's once again more action, exposition, and not a lot of meat to the story. Everything's progressed, so to speak, but really for the most part, the strongest emotional core that we're having so far is once again the X-Men and their pursuit of Killer Thrill and her men in order to save Corsair and the Starjammers, which, again, that's not bad. I do still like seeing how that continues on, and we see the lengths the X-Men are still willing to go through to try and save them, especially in the case of Cyclops, because, well, as they said in the comic, bonded with the symbiotes, the X-Men's emotional states are being enhanced, altered, which meant to kind of fit with the symbiotes they're being bonded with. And likewise, because the symbiotes are angry at Hazemancer for what he did to them, the X-Men are naturally aggressive because their symbiotes want this guy to pay. And likewise, combine that with what the X-Men are already feeling towards Hazemancer, i.e. angry at him for what he did to the Starjammers, and then as a result, he does, in fact, make them more aggressive. Especially with Cyclops, who, if you know anything about Cyclops, you know the dude's already kind of an asshole in his own regard. But add on the fact that his daddy has been kidnapped by space pirates who want to sell him for a bounty, and now combine that with a naturally aggressive symbiote, it definitely makes for some tension. And we see that tension in the story kind of here and there. As when Venom is chewing the X-Men out later for still keeping the symbiotes, Scott's the one that kind of calls him out on this and says, is it a danger to us or is it a danger to you? And Venom, of course, thinks that this is a threat, and, well, it is a threat. Scott's more than willing to duke it out with Venom because he's already angry, and it's Jean that has to be the one that acts as mediator and tell them both to calm down, and does kind of give them both leeway, as that's the point when she concedes to Venom's point that the symbiotes are having an effect on them, but also concedes to Scott's point that the symbiotes clearly want this bond to last for a while, and she at least knows the symbiotes do want justice for what Hazemancer did to them, which, honestly, actually, the more I think about it, I kind of am inclined to believe that Jean would know that because she's a psychic, and again, with her own psychic powers augmented by her symbiote, she'll of course not only be able to understand what her symbiote is feeling, but all the other symbiotes as well, so I do kind of like that. But otherwise, aside from that emotional, which, oh yeah, it's kind of going back off of that emotional core idea thing, we also see a bit of that from Corsair as well, for when Killer Thrill tries taunting him with that they could potentially kill his son. As for a second, Corsair does actually think that something has happened to Scott, and naturally, even if he doesn't think Scott's dead, of course a father is going to flinch when he hears that his son was impaled through the chest. But at the very least, what I do like is that that only affects him for a moment. At best, it only just hardens his resolve even more and makes him realize you hurt them, and they want to help me. You should have killed them when you had the chance because they're going to come for you. I like that little detail. That ultimately it affects him for a second, but his belief in his son and what he and his friends can do makes him essentially realize, okay, it's like no, you just made their resolve stronger. They're gonna fight harder now. Again, I like that kind of thing. It's really nice, and it does add more emotional depth and I think showcases more of the connection that Scott and his father have, despite the literal light years between them. But otherwise though, again, while the story does progress, it still feels more like the basic stuff you would need for the story. We got the action, we got exposition, and we have progress. Again, there's still an emotional core there that still keeps you invested, but otherwise it still feels very, I guess, in a way, formulaic. It does for a while, up to a point. The comic feels still like a standard superhero story. There are no big twists going on. The X-Men fight Hazemancer, and aside from them bonding with the symbiotes, ultimately things end with Venom and the X-Men coming out victorious and getting the information they want before heading off to face the next bad guy. It's not so it is pretty formulaic and pretty standard, but I will still give credit where it's due. The Venomized X-Men are still fucking kick-ass, and why wouldn't they be? They're Venomized versions of the X-Men, and like with the thrill of seeing all the Venomized superheroes from Venomverse, it is genuinely cool to see each of the X-Men as they're bonded with their symbiotes and how the symbiotes affect them. I already mentioned how they're affecting how the individual symbiotes are affecting their powers, but like I said when I talked about last issue, the designs for them in their symbiote forms look genuinely cool. There are enough elements from the original X-Men that you're still able to identify who's who and so forth, but you can still see enough Venomized symbiote bits in there so that they still look, in a way, monstrous. Like with Cyclops. Okay, I was wrong about his entire X being an eye now. It's just there's an X design around his eyes and he just has one sliver in the case of it. But it's still but it looks withered in a sense, especially when you see his little mouth there. Because, yeah, he does have a venom, because he does have, like, a little mouth with sharp teeth, which most of the time looks shut, but it's there, and the way it makes his head look all shriveled and sunken in, just definitely makes him look creepy. And with the fact that he can open up eyes on his body anywhere, it definitely kind of makes him resemble more of a monster. With Jean Grey, while her symbiote left her outfit mostly unaffected, the way her face is all just shrouded in black with the psychic powers, it definitely makes her look like a monster, from the shadows. Like I said, with Beast, he now does resemble more of his main unit. He now looks more like his present day counterpart, as he does look like a literal beast, but with actual horns sprouting on the side of his head. And combine that with his ability to summon little demons from his hands, that's even creepier. With Iceman, he definitely looks again like an ice monster. His symbiote form definitely makes him look like how he does when he's all iced up, but it's like black eyes with the dark eyes, an occasional mouth, and the way he can stretch his arms. It all looks really creepy. And of course, with Angel, like I said, he looks like a literal demon with having like bat wings instead of angel wings. It looks legitimately creepy, and I dig it. I love those designs, and I kind of like seeing how those symbiotes affect the X-Men's power. So again, I dig it. It's nice. I like it. Otherwise, and of course, the twist at the end of the comic, I think, is genuinely a really good twist, because up until this point, it looks like I said, the Poison X mostly felt like just a standard superhero adventure, which isn't bad. You can still get some basic entertainment out of that, but really there were no big twists in it beyond a few things here or there, like with Hazemancer's men finding the X-Men, or the X-Men themselves being bonded with symbiotes. Those things are like big developments that definitely make you go, oh shit, what's gonna happen? Oh shit, how's this gonna go down? But otherwise, the story itself has been rather formulaic. The Starjammers get kidnapped. X-Men go to save them. They get a lead. Find the guy who got that lead, and then find the guy that the lead leads back to, and then get another lead from him so that they continue tracking them down. It's again just kind of a formulaic adventure, just kind of basic stuff. It's not awful by any means. It still feels fun, because again, we still got the emotional core with the heroes and the interactions with all the characters, but otherwise the story itself just feels rather formulaic. But then you get the entrance of the Poisons, and with their introduction now, that's what marks Poison X as a true follow-up to Venomverse. Because after all, at the end of Venomverse, we saw that while the Poisons were dealt a heavy blow thanks to the Venom Army, they weren't out for the count. A good chunk of their numbers were killed, but there was still plenty more left over that could still continue on their assault. And even as Poison Thanos said at the end of Venomverse, they are now aware of the multiverse. They know that there are more symbiotes out there beyond what they were aware of. And so because of that, they know that there are other ways of getting what they want. And we are starting to see that here as we see a representative of the poisons, i.e. a poison version of Kraven, entering the Marvel Universe and immediately setting plans in motion as he frees Hazemancer. Which, again, I love the reveal of Poison Kraven. I love how we can only see like the tendrils from his body, or the silver spears that definitely look like poisons. And his design definitely has like the same sheen you'd see from a poison, as his face is flat with almost no mouth, the same beady eyes, with really the biggest identifying markers that it's Kraven being the leopard print jacket. But like with say Poison Deadpool, where you could see like bits of his old symbiote still writhing inside the body, you still see whatever symbiote that Kraven was bonded with still in there, wrapped around his jacket, just writhing about like tentacles. It's honestly it's just a genuinely creepy sight, and I think it's a good twist because it adds because it throws a monkey wrench into what's going on. Because up to this point, it just felt like a straight up heroes versus villains story. The bad guys have someone the heroes want to save, so the heroes are going after them. But with the poisons now in the fray, it makes you know that something big is going to happen. It's going to alter everything that's happening here, and whatever story we're going on is going to get knocked off the tracks because as we all know, the poisons want symbiotes. And, well, the X-Men are now bonded with them. Since we already know the poisons are very keen on getting hosts with superpowers, well, that makes the X-Men very much into Poison's crosshairs. So, definitely a great twist. But otherwise, though, what other aspects I liked? I guess really the only other aspects I can think of that I kind of enjoyed are how the X-Men have been affected by their symbiotes. Again, when someone is bonded with a symbiote, it is kind of cool to see that clash between the host and the symbiote as they kind of vie for control, and we see bits of the symbiote slipping into them, and we see them trying to fight against it. And just kind of the mishmash of the two as the symbiote starts little by little kind of overtaking the host. And we do get that a little bit in the story and even touch on it, but in essence, it's a footnote, because even in the universe, the X-Men admit that they don't really want this bond to stay either, and that they're only really staying with the symbiotes as a matter of convenience, since they know that what a symbiote is capable of. After all, Venom's a living example of it, and even he advocates don't stay with the symbiote too long, it can have an adverse effect on you. So yeah, there's really no kind of point to it. At best, it feels like it's just there to show that the symbiotes still have their standard downsides. And while the X-Men are enjoying the temporary power boost, that's all it is, temporary. So it's alright-ish, kind of fun. It's alright-ish, does kind of lead to some amusing bits, especially when Cyclops when Cyclops gets more aggressive, or when he butts heads with Venom, or when Beast and Iceman kind of duke it out, kind of butt heads a little because their symbiotes are siblings. But otherwise, it doesn't really go anywhere. It's just there to show the standard symbiote might not be having that being to show the standard being bonded with a symbiote might not be a good idea type of thing. So there you go. Otherwise, though, the issue itself is still fine. Like I said, for the most part, pretty formulaic with how it goes. Everything kind of progresses the way you would expect it to. So nothing really too big in that regard. But it still has some really cool moments with the X-Men, with seeing the X-Men bonded with their symbiotes. We learn more about the X-Men. Learn more and more where Corsair and the Starjammers are. We still got some good character stuff with the X-Men and Scott and the Starjammers, as they all are still trying to help the X-Men are still trying to find the Starjammers, and so on and so forth. And likewise, the final twist at the end, with the entrance of Poison Kraven does let you know that things are about to get even more serious, because we know that whatever plot's going on, the Poisons are definitely going to disrupt it with their own plans. So definitely a good way. Definitely still a good way of keeping you engaged. Overall, still a perfectly fine issue. Still entertaining, got some cool stuff, good twist ending to keep you invested. So yeah, overall, still pretty decent. So yeah, I think that's about it. That's all I have to say. So yeah, thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I hopefully will see you on Thursday as we see the X-Men catch up with Killer Thrill, and unfortunately see what happens as they and Venom finally once again clash with the Poisons. So till then, Hope you have a good night, and as always, take care.